Hello everyone! With the final shape literally just around the corner, I wanted to make a video for any possible new or returning players, discussing Destiny 2 and a fatal flaw I think they should be warned about. D2 has some of the most amazing stories and world building I've ever played. The gunplay and abilities are top notch, so I can see how people are drawn into it, especially with how Final Shape is looking to be. But it has a massive flaw in its design that you should be made aware of. FoMo. For those who don't know, FoMo is an acronym for the fear of missing out. Many games have this built in via skins from battle passes or events that go away after a few weeks, never to return, along with all of the rewards that would come with them. This drives a player to think that I have to play the game, even if I'm not enjoying it, because I don't want to miss out on these cosmetics or unlocks. Destiny, though, does something way worse. It locks full story content and even important character deaths or arcs behind these seasons. These seasons are a few month-long journeys that help set up the coming DLCs or expansions that lead up to the next major story arc. And with the lead up to the final shape, we've had 4 seasons, and each one of these seasons has had intense and important story aspects to them. As of the launch of the final shape, every single one of those aspects is going to be thrown to the wind, tossed aside like they mean nothing. As has every season before them. That means any returning player for Final Shape, or is just now joining the game for Final Shape, will never be able to get caught up on the story, as there are some major events that take place during these 4 seasons, and seasons prior. Even I, who have a few thousand hours in the game, have never gotten to experience a good amount of the story content. A great example of this is Rasputin. He's a legendary AI that has existed, as far as I know, through both the events of D1 and D2. A character spanning many story arcs, but is no longer in the story. My understanding was that he died during a season. But as there was no way in-game to find this out, I just had no idea. I returned for Lightfall, I was playing through Lightfall, and I never found out what happened to Rasputin, this Russian AI with a love for classical music. It took my friend telling me, while he was showing me this gun that he'd collected, that Rasputin had been put into a gun. He wasn't actually dead, but during the events of the seasons, the Guardians had turned him into a gun. And it's possible that in the future, if they ever wanted to bring Rasputin back, that gun would have significance. And me, someone who has countless hours in the game, had no idea about that, and have no way of finding out in-game. Now, in my opinion, Destiny 2's love for this FOMO aspect of their storytelling is a huge flaw in Destiny's design. And it is a flaw that I think no game has ever come close to beating. My main point is essentially that a newer returning player experiencing the seasonal story the way it's presented will be totally lost because of the character arcs and story advancements that have happened during those times, and how the character in-game has those relationships and has experienced it, but the player hasn't. And you might be thinking that surely some of these seasonal events aren't going to have much of an impact on the actual expansions. Like, the previous seasons surely didn't have much impact on Witch Queen, or Lightfall, or the Final Shape coming up. But I know of 3 that will have impact. The first being the death of a character in Season of Defiance, Season 21, which was the first season released during this 4-season arc. The character's death, and spoilers if you haven't done it, is Amanda Holiday, the Guardian's like personal shipwright, the engineer, the human engineer who wasn't a Guardian but still fought just as hard. She died during Season of Defiance. And you can see in the most recent trailer for Final Shape, there's a small tidbit where Zavala looks at a headband that's wrapped around his arm. That's very obviously Amanda Holiday's, and he's grieving for her. And it could likely come up as a plot point later on in the story. But to anyone who never played Season of Defiance, will have no idea that Amanda Holiday is dead. And will have no way of, if they returned to the game and wanted to get caught up, have no way of playing that sequence. Have no way of experiencing her death and knowing she died. Another one is Crow. Impressive linchpin to the game, and has had an expansive character arc spanning over several seasons. Seasons you can no longer play anymore. In fact, even the main DLC he was the antagonist in, where we killed him and he came back as a Guardian, is no longer playable anymore. You can only do a small mission in-game with a small cutscene. You don't get any of the emphasis on the character. And the season where he was neglected and rejected as a Guardian then eventually was accepted by the Tower and Zavala and all the people that were friends of Cade is gone. Just dust in the wind. So character interactions between Crow and Cade in The Traveler with Final Shape will have no meaning to someone who hasn't played the seasons. It will make no sense. Because they never were there for that character growth. And then lastly, it's a small one that I'm not sure will play any part, but in the most recent 2 seasons, we have extended a hand of help and gotten help from Savathun, the Witch Queen, who is now, as of the Witch Queen DLC, reborn as a Guardian. In a way, we do have allies in the Hive, even. So that could possibly re-emerge during Final Shape and completely blindside anyone who missed out on these seasons and has come back for Final Shape. And that's awful. I think that's sad. But there is hope. In more recent news, the gameplay you see behind me is from a game mode called Onslaught. It's part of an event called Into the Light, where the devs have shown interest in bringing back old content. They have old missions, the Whisper of the Worm mission and Outbreak Perfected, where you can get craftable versions of those guns. You have reprised weapons, like Luna's Howl, or Edge Transit, or the amazing Elsie's Rifle. And those weapons were sunset, they were gone. And they've recently walked back the sunsetting. Sorry, Dado. But with those weapons coming back and with everything coming back, you might be thinking, oh, well, the devs obviously want to bring back old content. Unfortunately, even this game mode is still plagued by FOMO, because as of the launch of Final Shape, the game mode will still be here, but those earnable weapons are going away. I believe I saw something along the lines that they've extended the duration in which these brave weapons are available to you into the later days of June, but they're still going away. You still have a limited time to get them. And this was supposed to be a resurgence, a bringing back of old content, a revamp, to show that we want to bring back stuff for the Final Shape. The Final Shape is a culmination of all this stuff that you can no longer play, so here's some of it. And that's going away with the Final Shape. So what's the point? And now, this all sounds pretty bad for new players overall. And sadly, it's kind of worse than you think. Because November 2020, 4 years ago, Red War, Destiny 2's main base story, was vaulted. Basically, what vaulting is they take certain aspects of the game and certain parts of the game and just toss it into a literal vault you can no longer access anymore. Now, while the assets might still be in the game, they might get maps that use the assets, you might get little missions where you're inside old zones. You can no longer access the core aspect of these zones. There's no open world to them anymore. And there's no story. And there's currently no replacement for the Red Wars story. All you have as a new light, as someone new to the game, is a basic intro story of just random quests, essentially. Of, hey, this is your light. This is the area you're in. Go do some strikes. Go do some PvP. And that's it. Until you possibly have a friend tell you that, oh, you can go to the moon and do some story quests. You might not know. The game doesn't really tell you. Until you buy DLCs, you don't really have a proper story after you finish those few introductory quests. It is an awful new player experience because of the fact they removed this introductory story. And once you get the DLCs, you'll encounter NPCs that have a relationship with your character. You'll encounter dialogue of NPCs who seemingly have had character development and story arcs with your character, but not you. Not the player. The player hasn't experienced these things. Only your character has. So you'll be lost. There'll be dialogue about how Osiris was essentially kidnapped and replaced by Savathun. How Saint 14 was trapped forever in the Infinite Forest. How you defeated the grand villain of the Red War, and you're fighting his shadow on the moon and have no idea who this shadow is. And it's just awful. And because of the fact you can't replay these seasonal stories, because you can't replay the Red War, I've had friends completely quit the game after trying it. This game that has an incredible story and world, they just don't want to play that. Because they'll have to spend several hours on YouTube if they care about the story. If they want to know more about the story. They want to know more about these characters, about who Osiris is, what's your relationship with Ikora and Cade and Zavala. What happened to them? You just have to look it up. I mean, Empress Keitel in Lightfall, an ally of the Cabal that we have. Her introduction and allying with us was a seasonal thing, with no explanation of why we're suddenly allied with the Cabal in Lightfall. I had to go and explain that to my friend who was playing Lightfall with me, why we're now friends with the Cabal, and the Fallen even in Season of the Splicer, and how Saint 14 made amends to the Fallen. It's, personally, to me, awful. You have FOMO in the fact that the seasons will go away and those character building moments will be tossed in the garbage. You have FOMO in the fact that half of Destiny 2 story is just already gone, and new players will have no connection to these characters in Final Shape. You have FOMO in the normal way that games has, in the form of cosmetics, like, League events and skins, or battle passes in Fortnite, and seasonal weapons that you might get, like, from events in, like, say, Genshin Impact even. An RPG story game still has FOMO in these aspects. All games have it these days. Your life, in general, has it. But Destiny has all of it combined, and it's just not right. All in all, though, I am excited for Final Shape. It's looking forward to the expansion as a player who's played a lot of that content. It doesn't affect me. FOMO doesn't affect me in this game. But it will affect a new player. Now, unless the following updates following Final Shape, the episodic series that they're doing, does something to address this level of FOMO, via some method of replaying past story events, or some level of time walking, maybe, I cannot recommend anyone truly new to the game to buy Destiny 2. Especially if you're intending on playing it for the story. You will be lost. You will need to spend hours on YouTube just trying to understand what's happening, as the game seemingly just doesn't care about your experience of the story anymore. Given the fact that the Destiny series is one of the most amazing stories I've ever experienced, it's kind of sad. The highs and the lows of the story and the amazing worlds have been taken from us. We'll never get to experience them again, only to watch other people experience them in the past. But I remain hopeful that with the defeat of the Witness, the forces of darkness that they control, that these planets will return to us, that these things that were taken from us will be returned, and we can bring light back to these long forgotten stories and relive them again. Thank you all for listening to me, and I sincerely hope in the future that any new lights and returning players will get to experience Destiny 2's story in full, from the Red War to all of the DLCs we've lost to even the seasonal stories. If all of that was in Destiny as its own separate download that players could take on themselves, so the devs didn't need to worry about the size of the game, I would then fully recommend Destiny to every player I know, to every person I know that plays video games and likes future and magic and guns and incredible worlds and space travel and all this stuff that makes Destiny good. I would recommend it. But at the moment, it'd be like recommending half of something. You've joined in halfway through, and there's no way to rewind it. There's no way to get the rest of the food you were supposed to be served. It's already in the garbage. It's already been thrown away. And that sucks. But you have to have hope. Because if you don't have hope, what else do you have? Thank you.